February 1, 2023 meeting of the Ames Planning and Zoning Commission will come to order. The Planning and Zoning Commission is an independent advisory body of the City of Ames City Council. The Planning and Zoning Commission members are volunteers of the community and not part of the city administration. The Planning and Zoning Commission is supported by staff from the city's planning division. The commission is responsible for recommendations on matters involving subdivisions, annexations, master plans, and major site development plans, amendments to the zoning ordinance, and comprehensive plan amendments. We make our recommendations based on city codes, the facts presented, and input from the public. As an advisory commission, we welcome all comments regarding the proposed item. Please direct your input to the commission. If the proceedings become lengthy, we may ask that comments be focused on new information not previously presented. You may speak only once on an agenda item. If you wish to speak, please fill out a speaker information card and present it to the recording secretary, Eileen. We ask that you come to the microphone here in the front and speak so that all comments may be recorded. The order of the proceeding for each item on the agenda will be as follows. City staff will present the staff report regarding the agenda item. Commission members will have an opportunity to ask questions of city staff. Then the applicant will be invited to make a statement regarding the request. Commission members will then have an opportunity to ask questions of the applicant. Members of the audience will then be invited to come forward and offer comments and questions. Once the public comment period is closed, city staff and the applicant will have opportunity for concluding remarks. The commission will discuss the application based on all presentations and any comments given and come to a recommendation for the city council. The discussion may include further questions of city staff and the applicant for clarification. With that, we'll move on to the first item of the agenda. This is the introduction of the commission members. Somebody want to go first?
Julie Winter.
Mike Sullivan.
Mike Clayton.
John Emery.
Mike LaPetra.
Jim Blickensdorf.
Okay, the next item is the approval of the agenda. You have the agenda and you've had a chance to take a look at it.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and second to approve the agenda. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Approval of the minutes of the January 4th and January 18th, 2023 Planning and Zoning Commission meetings. You have the minutes of both meetings in front of you. Any comments or concerns? Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Motion. Second.
Do we have a motion and a second? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Next item is the public forum. Is there anybody in the audience that would like to come up and speak on an item that's not on the agenda? Seeing none, we'll close the public forum. Item 6 is public hearing for the master plan amendment for 798 North 500th Avenue, which is also called North Sunset Ridge.
I'm just trying to get the projector to work. Ah. Okay. All right. This item is property owned by Hunziker. It's 28.58 acres, located at 798 North 500th Avenue. They have applied to amend their previously approved rezoning master plan. This item was on the agenda for January 18th, and it was continued to tonight's meeting due to lack of a quorum. To the south of the property is the current Sunset Ridge development. To the north of the property is planned a future city park at some time. That's still being worked through, all the details of that. And I did want to mention a couple things before I get started too much. One, the applicant has indicated he won't be able to be here tonight. Basically, this item is something that came before this board in the summer. And this was the master plan that was approved at that time. What has occurred is that there's been some changes in the proposed development. And so the master plan needs to be amended to allow the developer to proceed with preliminary plat. The amended master plan includes revisions to the connection points to the north. So you can see on this previous one that was approved previously, there were basically 3 connections to the north. This connection here is being eliminated. The connections to the south will remain, the 2 to the south. I did want to make mention that this plan here is slightly different than the one in your packet. This is the correct one. The only difference between what you have in your packet and this plan is this green strip to the south here. We felt they needed to show that in green for stormwater, and it actually was similar. This previous one you can see had green along the south border of the property. So this amended master plan, you can see that one connection to the north has been eliminated, and the reason is that was actually staff's request because of the future park. The proposed future park, in talking with Parks and Rec and their concept for the layout and how it's going to function, they wanted access to the park to be from Wilder in here, and not to have this access point as far as a vehicular access point. We are going to propose, we are asking the applicant to provide a pedestrian connection to the park in that area, but not a vehicular one. Another change is this area to the west. The Hunziker is in discussions with the property owner here, the Hall property. And because of that, they're hoping to acquire that land and merge it together into this part for development. There will be some future connection to the north, likely in this location, but it could move slightly depending on the purchase of that land and so forth. So this land's been now designated as future development. The open space changed a bit, and the count of the number of proposed units changed a little bit as well. It went from a maximum of 65 to a maximum of 75 units. So there's a range of units proposed. And so usually there's a minimum and a maximum in any master plan, and that gives some wiggle room to the developer as he's working through the actual preliminary plat and any issues that come up. Rather than going through I will say this line here is the proposed sanitary sewer line, and that's going to connect in from the main and come through, and that is being upsized to be able to accommodate future development to the west. And that sewer line, the cost sharing for the upsizing of that was addressed in an agreement that was accepted in by the city council in August. And but it will need to be amended as well because of the master plan. The master plan was attached to that agreement. So this is actually the rezoning amendment for the master plan, as well as an amendment to the contract zoning agreement. We believe that The master plan is consistent with the adopted Ames Plan 2040 as described in the addendum, and utilization of infrastructure and city services for this parcel is consistent with what's been anticipated for development in this area. The current zoning is not changing, but the location of development and total number of units are adjusted with the proposed amendment. The master plan will restrict the maximum number of units on this property to no more than 75, with all dwellings being single-family detached homes. And final design details of the street and lot layouts will be part of the preliminary plat review process. So planning and housing supports alternative 1. And I won't go through anything else. I'll open it up for questions, and I'm happy to answer any questions or to go through more detail if you'd like.
Access off of 500?
Pardon?
Is there going to be a access off of 500?
There won't be an access here off of 500. We plan to see an access go to the north and then over to the west in
And
the
then-
future.
And then if they get the Hall property, they'll eliminate the driveway on the Hall property.
Right.
I mean, I'm not going to say what driveways are altered in the future. And that's not something that we're going to be able to say about what's happening right now.
If all of that would be developed, it's likely they would eliminate it, but it may not all be developed as part of the future development. It's unknown.
Are there any other questions for staff?
The only other thing, that black area right up there at the top and to the right.
This area that looks
Yeah.
kind of dark,
Yes.
it looks dark because of the grades. It's a little steeper in that area. So it's just reading is darker.
So it's not a containment.
This is the start of a little ravine that goes down to the creek.
Okay.
Just a question about on the, I guess the south of it. It's a different slide, but portion of that property is marked NCMU. What is neighborhood core mixed use typically?
There is no typical because it was invented last year and it hasn't
Yeah.
been developed yet. But it's basically, it allows for standard commercial development with the addition of apartments if desired. So there's not one that I can point to exactly that says that's how it would be done. So
Any other questions? If not, I'll open up the public forum. Is there anybody in the audience that would like to speak or ask questions about this project? Seeing none, we'll close the public forum. Any other discussion? If not, I would entertain a motion.
Move for alternative 1. The Planning and Zoning Commission recommend that City Council approve the amended master plan for 28.58 acres at 798 North 500th Avenue.
Second.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. The motion is passed. The next item on the agenda is a public hearing for minor amendment to the Ames Plan 2040 future land use map for the portion of the parcel located at 325 Billy Sunday Road from Civic to Community Commercial.
So you can see from the aerial where this property is located, it's south of Highway 30 and to the east of South Duff. This property is actually owned by the city and the city is the applicant. This particular item and the next item are the same property. The first item is the future land use map amendment. The second item is a request for a rezone. So currently, the property within the future land use designation for the property is civic. What's kind of interesting about that is that the previous LUPP showed it as commercial, but because it is owned by the city, it's got the U.S. Army Reserve building here up closer to Duff. It's got the Ames Animal Shelter here. It's got the Ames Dog Park over here. So it was the idea that it would align better with the ownership and use to designate it as civic. This request is to change the designation for a portion of that property. So the property contains approximately 24.5 acres total. And we're requesting that 16.5 acres approximately be changed to what's called community commercial retail. And you can see that this designation is already to the south of the property and up here to the north of the property. It's a very appropriate designation in an interchange area in particular. And in the analysis of this, we found that this property is really surplus property for the city. The city doesn't have any particular use for the future of this property. It is currently housing the Ames animal shelter, and this piece that's being left as civic to the east here would be a future site for a new animal shelter. That's the idea. By selling this property, the city could use the revenue to build a new animal shelter. It's we looked a lot at the Ames Plan 2040 for the land use categories and their intended uses. We looked at policies for amending the future land use map. So we went through that. And what's really interesting about this particular parcel is it's very visible. It has easy access from Highway 30. There's a direct connection now to Billy Sunday Road from South Duff. So it's really an ideal site for this type of commercial use. And given that it's surplus property for the city, it makes sense that the city would go ahead and allow it to transition into something else. The majority of it right now is just vacant and undeveloped. So the request is to change it from civic to community commercial retail. 8 acres would retain the civic designation. And so we looked at the suitability of infrastructure and what was in place. And of course, it's got infrastructure already on Billy Sunday Road, services and so forth. So it actually is more like an infill property because it's already got those services very conveniently stubbed. So we, as mentioned, the predominant land use surrounding the interchange is community commercial retail. The proposed change satisfies the review criteria of Ames Plan 2040, and it's supported by the principles of Ames Plan 2040 as identified in the addendum, especially land use 5 related to places for employment and enterprise. We looked at how that Ames Plan 2040 has a population projection and a projection for future needed areas for commercial. And we looked at all of that. We looked at the location, the visibility, the surrounding land uses, and we looked at the impacts to the area and anticipated with any anticipated changes resulting from the change of land use. We looked at the traffic and the access and so forth. So in doing all of that, we felt that it was supported by the Ames Plan 2040 and that we do recommend approval of alternative 1, which is to recommend that the city council approve an amendment to the Ames Plan 2040 future land use map, changing the future land use of approximately 16.5 acres located at 325 Billy Sunday Road from civic to community commercial retail as illustrated on attachment C. I'm happy to answer questions.
You're showing the entire, the part that's in kind of the pink or mauve color. That includes the access road that goes back to the soccer park. Will that become like a city street, or how is that going to be? Will it be written into a sales agreement that road has to remain?
Yes, we believe that access would be from Billy Sunday Road to the commercial area. That access to the ballpark would remain, and it would have to be that would be part of the agreement with any purchaser.
So this doesn't lead to subdivision, so that would be dealt with at the time of subdivision.
Okay.
It won't be a city street. It's not built to city street standards.
Another question, has the city had discussion with the DOT about any future plans on this interchange? They plan on doing
I mean,
any other any reconfiguration?
I mean, there's nothing in our transportation plan that would say that interchange would be affected by what we're doing here. So our Forward 45 transportation plan has no interchange. There's interchange improvements, but it doesn't impact where
Okay.
we're addressing this rezoning.
Did the city look at keeping that bump out into the park? The top bump out that's up there?
Yeah, I was curious about that
Consider
too.
using that as part of the park?
So again, we're not saying that's the parcel that'll be sold. We're just saying that we know that red land at this point in time is not necessary for city interests. So we're going to rezone it to commercial. We may or may not sell it, but from a zoning perspective, we know it doesn't need to be government.
You had a buyer for it.
No.
Okay.
No.
Yeah. So this just makes it so you can sell the parcel. But as far as subdividing it from here,
So
that's up in the air.
there'll absolutely have to be a plat to divide it because it's one.
Okay.
What'd you say? 20.
16 and a half acres,
The total parcel is bigger than that. Right?
24 and a half.
Right. So it's one parcel. It'll need to become 3 for us, at least 3 for us to sell any of it.
Okay.
I guess getting back to the private drive question, I just want I mean, if someone came in and wanted to buy the property, but did not want to, it was conditional upon not providing an easement for that road.
Won't happen.
Okay.
It has to exist. There's no other way to get there.
Right. No, I know. That's
they
why.
might
yeah.
not own the road. So right. This isn't about property. This is about what uses can be allowed here. You
Mhm.
won't know the configuration of the parcel, what easements are necessary until a subdivision is proposed.
Right. No, I understand that. I'm just, I guess, I'm concerned that there will be someone that wants to use that and doesn't want that road there. But that you're saying that,
It's not possible. The
Okay.
road has to be there.
well, I agree.
And the zoning
Yeah.
doesn't dictate that issue. So
Okay.
it's really not, you can zone it whatever you want. It doesn't deal with the fact that there's an access driveway there.
Are there any other questions?
Is the animal shelter aware of
Yes.
these plans? Okay.
Yes. Again, for city projects, city departments have all been made aware
The city owns.
what we're
this
looking. Yeah.
over. Okay.
Yep.
gotcha.
We own all of it.
Okay.
So it's one of those unfunded capital improvement projects, which is to rebuild the animal shelter.
Okay, if there are no other questions, we'll open it up for anybody from the audience that would have questions or comments if they would like to come forward. Seeing none, we'll close the public forum for this item. Is there any further discussion? If not, I would entertain a motion.
So move. For alternative number one.
What's your motion?
Sorry about that. Recommend the city approve the amendment to the Ames plan. Yeah, make sure I have the right one. Recommend the city council approve the amendment to the Ames Plan 2040 future land use map, changing the future land use of the approximate 16.5 acres located at 325 Billy Sunday Road from civic to community commercial retail, CR, as illustrated on attachment C.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Hi.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Motion is approved. Next item, as was noted, is in relationship to the same parcel. It's a public hearing for rezone of a portion of the parcel located at 325 Billy Sunday Road from government/airport district S-GA to highway oriented commercial HOC.
So this item also is continued from the last meeting. I think I did not mention that on the last item, but the accompanying item we just talked about for the future land use amendment is related to this item. And the change of land use that you just recommended would support a change would support the rezoning. So currently the property has an overlay. It's a special zoning district, government airport, and the entire parcel is designated that way. As mentioned before, it's one parcel owned by the city. The proposed is to take that same 16.5 acres and make that zoning to be highway oriented commercial, which you can see is also to the north, the Menards, the dealership there on the corner, and also the Wilson Toyota dealership down here is the same zoning. The parcel is predominantly undeveloped except for the U.S. Army Reserve here, Ames Animal Shelter here, which we're proposing to relocate to this area, which would put it right across from the dog park, which would be a very convenient and appropriate location. There is Billy Sunday is an improved road. It has direct access to South Duff. And as mentioned, the access to the Hunziker sports complex is along the perimeter of this property, or I should say property, this perimeter of this designated area, and accessing the sports complex that's further to the east. The parcel is relatively flat, has slightly higher elevation on the east. It abuts Highway 30 on the north. This is an apartment complex on the south. It has excellent visibility from Highway 30. We looked at the criteria, which is included in your addendum. We look at the rezoning, the background. We look at what Ames Plan 2040 says and what the future land use is for the property. And with the change that you recommended, this is appropriate to have highway-oriented commercial zoning. It's intended to allow auto-accommodating commercial development. And we have most of South Duff is zoned HOC. There are utilities and infrastructure available. And And as mentioned, that once it would need to have the lot divided before it could be sold. So at this point, it's just one lot, one parcel for the entire area. And it would require site plan review process and so forth to make sure that any proposed development and use is consistent with what is already there and what to make it safe and functional for all users. So we do recommend alternative one, which is to recommend approval of the request to rezone approximately 16.5 acres of the parcel located at 325 Billy Sunday Road from SGA to HOC as illustrated on this graphic. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Where's the Sunday Cemetery?
It's over here.
Okay, so it's not part of any.
Not part of this.
Are there any other questions? If not, we'll open up the floor to anybody in the audience that has comments or questions. If so, please come forward. Seeing none, we'll close the public forum for this item. If there's no further discussion, I'd entertain a motion on this item.
The only question I guess I had, just like speaking out loud, is so, the kind of a logistical one, we're doing these two, one right after another, and we're recommending a rezoning of a parcel that's currently civic even though we recommended it be changed. So I'm wondering if we need a conditional alternative that says pending council approval of the amendment to the Ames Plan 2040, we recommend this. I don't know if that's necessary, but in my mind, it makes sense.
Aren't all these items that we do recommended to the city?
Right. He's just saying that in this case, it's pretty logical how it's presented, but you could have a situation where maybe you voted no on the last item, but independently you're saying if the land use change was approved, then we would support this, but we're against the land use change, right? You could have a sequence of events that occur that way, and then what Michael is saying would make a lot of sense. It's fine to do that tonight too, if you want to do that.
Okay, that makes sense.
So I guess that would be my, I don't have any concerns with the rezoning. I guess I would just recommend alternative one with the condition that city council approves the amendment to Ames Plan 2040. So I guess I can read. So recommend that the city council approve the request to rezone approximately 16.5 acres of the parcel located at 325 Billy Sunday Road from SGA to HOC as illustrated on attachment C, contingent upon approval of the minor amendment to Ames Plan 2040. Does that make sense?
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? If not, those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. The motion is approved. The next item, excuse me, is the zoning text amendment to eliminate rooftop solar panel zoning requirements.
Good evening. Ames City Council received a request a few months ago from a resident to consider removing zoning permitting requirements and standards relating to residential solar energy systems, which is how our code refers to the broad range of things, but solar panels essentially. The council reviewed the information regarding the current requirements and permitting process and directed staff to initiate a text amendment to remove zoning requirements specifically related to rooftop solar energy systems for all uses. The proposed zoning code changes do not alter requirements that rooftop mounted systems comply with the building and electrical codes, as well as electrical service provider requirements. Permitting freestanding and wall-mounted facilities are not modified with this proposed text amendment. And highlights of the changes to the code are the removal of the solar energy system height limitations and requirements that the equipment be flush with the roof, eliminating SUP process for approval of systems that are not flush mounted, eliminating the need for a solar energy system zoning permit for roof mounted systems, allowing for rooftop systems regardless of the non-conforming status of a residential use or structure, reorganizing some of the information for clarity, and modifying some of the formatting for clarity. And staff does recommend the changes as they are presented in attachment B.
So what the staff is saying that it's okay to have an upright solar panel on your roof.
Well, at council's direction, we are removing any requirement for whatever angle you have it at. It is no longer under this code regulated. I have a hard time believing that there would be a vertical solar.
No,
panel
I realize
because
that they
you wouldn't
use
get the sun.
maximum angle for solar, but same result is that it can be an eyesore on top of your neighbor's roof.
Yeah, so I mean, we're supporting the recommendation. So yes, staff believes not just because council told us to approach this amendment, but we're saying that yes, we find that eliminating that standard isn't going to undermine the character of residential areas. That's what we're saying.
I can't see how it can't.
I think
I mean, if you raise that one edge of that thing up 45 degrees off the roof, then it has to affect the character of the residential property.
I think that's in the eye of the beholder. We're saying that the city of Ames is no longer is going to consider that to be detrimental to residential character. And really those angled installations are only a issue on flat roofs for the most part. If you have a pitched roof, you're very little different in pitch versus what you put on your roof is how it's typically done.
No, I understand, but again, by changing the angle on top of the roof, it's going to present another eye detail. I'm all for solar. I mean, I love the idea of solar if we can make it work within the city's infrastructure. But
I guess my
on a
question,
flat roof, I can understand a different.
I guess my question would be, in what case would that actually really be an issue? Because there are a lot of towns that don't even regulate anything related to this, and in fact, it seems a little detrimental to the
Yep.
installation of the
But
panels.
this isn't
to
every
have-
town. This is Ames.
It's true, but I mean, we've got how many permits were pulled for this? This was 53 that have been pulled since 2018. And I'd be curious. I mean, this is coming from the recommendation of one person, but I guess you have a point. But at the same time, I just don't know that it's all that relevant because there are a lot of towns that even the big towns don't regulate that.
I understand what other towns do and don't do, but what I'm saying is, would you like an eyesore on your neighbor's house that may or may not devalue your property somewhat? you can't, just because you want solar. And like, again, I say, solar, the whole idea, solar and wind are a wonderful idea in my perspective. But you got to be a bit considerate of the people around you. We don't live in just a lot. What you do on your lot affects everybody around you.
So I'll say something. So I can't believe I'm somewhat agreeing with you on this, but I've been, there's a town in Southeast Iowa, I won't name it, but I've been through it, and they very prevalent solar in town on almost every structure you can see sticking out, sticking up off the structures, and it does change the character. I mean, if we're assuming it's, this won't be widespread, I think maybe you can say that, but you don't really know once you make this change. I'm probably the biggest proponent of green energy and sustainability that you can find, but I do think I do have concerns about the way this is written and about changing that requirement for roof.
So is the issue the height limitation, or because there's two things going on in this code? There's that it has to be parallel to the slope of the roof, which I think is what I'm hearing with the concerns related to here. But then there's also the concern that the panels be no further than 6 inches from the roof. Is that a manufacturing issue or an installation issue, or what's the nature of
The 6-inch height.
Yeah, I guess why are people asking that those two particular things be let up on? from
Those are
zoning
the
perspective?
those are the main requirements that we have currently in the code.
I think the author of the letter believes any permitting and regulatory standards are to the detriment of people pursuing installation of solar. So he wasn't necessarily against the 6-inch standard. He was just against any permitting process or requirements.
He was
related
against
to
the
roof
special
solar.
use permit. That
And then
he
I
would
would
have
say,
to-
he's against all of it, but absolutely he's against the special use permit component for the flat roofs.
Yeah, you can see there.
Raise your mic up, would you?
Oh, sure. Sorry. I can bring it closer to
in G up there.
What'd you say that last part?
I said the author of the letter, I think, was in his mind, in her mind, that all of the regulations and permits in their totality are detrimental to people pursuing solar installations, just making it more cumbersome than necessary in her eyes. I think specifically the flat roof issue would absolutely be that it's detrimental because you might not be able to meet that standard and have a qualifying. You might not get that permit. You might not be able to have solar based on that regulation we have about flat roofs.
But you can do a special use.
But
there's
still,
no
there's
guarantee.
limits. Still, there's limits.
Right. I understand on a flat roof, it's easy to figure out what the most optimum angle is for
That's-
solar. All you have to do is
but
look at
that's-
our solar farm.
That's not the standard, though, in the special use permit. The special use permit has nothing to do about what's good for you. It has to do about whether you meet residential character. So right there, you can see just by the conversation we've had in the last 5 minutes, you already have two people that are concerned about residential character because it's not flush mounted on a roof. You can see how that author of the letter is now like, wow, I have to go to ZBA. I don't know if I can have solar panels. Because it's a discretionary choice with the special use permit about making a finding that you're compliant with I'm paraphrasing, the character of the neighborhood and some other compatibility requirements. We even have some stuff about buffering and not being able to be seen from the street on some of those flat roof standards as well, right? You can just see why the author wrote the letter.
Yeah.
I guess I can't because
Well,
my
because the
neighbor
permit-
just put up solar.
But the
And
permit
it looks
process,
fine.
Mhm.
But it doesn't detriment to anybody on the whole street.
but the
And-
permit process is not about what's good for your house. It's about whether there's an impact to the character. So if you don't like a 45-degree angled installation on the side of a house, the ZBA could say that's out of character, denied.
You mean after this?
No,
No,
with the
right
current
now.
requirements. If we delete
Yeah.
the requirement, the ZBA no one will review it. It'll just be whatever meets building code and whatever meets an interconnect agreement from the energy provider.
And that's what I say is wrong. You have to, take into account the neighborhood, the neighbors, and everybody else. You can't just, put anything up put a windmill up on my house? No, that ain't going to fly in the city of Ames.
You can
And I
build-
know there's probably different regulations and all that stuff.
You can build a windmill on your lot. I don't think it'd be very productive for you, but yes.
Oh, you haven't been out in my lot. The wind always blows
I'll just
there.
say, once you have to meet the standards, but yeah.
But
I mean, this is the core issue. So our recommendation is that based on the evidence of permitting over the last 7 years or whatever we put in the report, we've really only had the one flat roof installation. We have had more of those for multifamily structures. We had a few for those, but they were able, in that case, we got around that in the sense that they were able to have a parapet that made it not visible from the street. So we didn't have to apply the height limit. But if I had to apply the height limit, even though it's behind a parapet, it wasn't approvable.
Did those multifamily units though have to go through Board of Adjustment? to get
They
the
did
special
not
permits?
because of the parapet that was able to shield that. And that wasn't out of character for that building to have a parapet. But I'm not thinking single family homes are going to benefit from a 6 or 7 foot tall parapet, 12 foot off the ground. And that'd be worse than a solar
Even
panel.
worse. Yeah.
Right. So this is the issue. Are we looking at this as how do we encourage the most solar installations in the city? Is that our number one goal? Or are we going to pull back one step and say we support solar, but only if it can be flush mount? Essentially, we can get rid of the 6 inches and just stay with flush mount and make it 6, 8, 9, whatever. And then the question comes back to the few flat roof properties. There's not a lot of those in Ames, but they do exist. Are they going to have to get a special permit to have any chance of installing an angled
Would that even
solar
be
panel?
in the case of like a mansard style roof though? Like not even a flat, but I think oftentimes like mansards are going to have a similar concern, right? That
They could. And not a lot of single families with that design, but it could. I think that's the question. So you can see
And
where
so-
the author of the letter is coming from. It's beyond theoretical that there could be limitations on people installing rooftop solar. So on pitched roofs, it has not been an issue. We have not denied a single permit. We asked for more information to verify they're meeting the standards, but no one with a pitched roof has been denied a solar permit.
what about even a low pitch though, like a manufactured house or something like that?
Yep.
That-
So they would have that same issue with the 6 inches flush. I mean, it's not literally a flat roof. It's just if you can't meet that 6-inch flush and you have a low pitch on your roof, you're going to be subject to that ZBA standard.
that's going to be a fair amount of houses then too.
It could happen.
town, depending.
could happen.
Would this eliminate any review of freestanding systems?
So we retain freestanding and wall mount. So if you put it on the facade of your house, that's still subject to review. And if you were to build it in your yard, you're subject to standards in your yard.
One other question, why would the city allow placement on a non-conforming structure?
So that comes back to our codes really don't force or even strongly encourage non-conforming structures to go away. You have a lot of rights to retain that and maintain it. So if you have a non-conforming house, we'll pick an example. Let's go just off of East Lincoln Way. Some of the houses to the south of East Lincoln Way, it's a commercial zone, so you have homes there that are non-conforming structures. We don't want to limit somebody that thinks they have a lot of life left in their house from having solar if they think it's that investment. We don't see it as really undermining or extending that non-conforming use's life or that non-conforming structure's life. So we feel like that's incidental.
How many incidences have there actually been of people going through the special use permit process for solar panels?
One.
I think
right?
it was, I only know of the one.
Yeah, I can only recall one.
I wonder how many have been deterred from that process, knowing that it's a huge process to go through. I mean, if you look at on page 2, they've got a table on all the permits that have been pulled from 2018 to 22, basically. And it looks to me like 21 and 22 were huge years for permits to be pulled from residential. So in my mind, I'm kind of thinking if I definitely understand the character conversation we're having here, but I also don't want to do anything to put the brakes on residential solar. because I do think that it's gonna, when you think of a flat roof house, it's more than what we're thinking of. It's anything that would be modular housing. I mean, the roof pitch is, it can be very, very small in some cases, especially more affordable housing. So.
I guess my feeling is if we do about anything to it, we're going to throw the baby out with the bathwater and not be protecting the other citizens of this city. You know, just opening up the only issue my neighbors ever had before this even came up was trying to get the city out there to approve. They had it on and they couldn't plug it into the city until the city approved plugging it in. And I just don't. My feeling is that nothing needs to be changed. If the only thing that needs to be changed would be on a flat roof, except making an exception for a flat roof. Years ago, my parents had a passive solar on their flat roof, and it was very telling. You could see it. They ended up putting a pitched roof on their house just because flat roofs are not very practical in Iowa. But not everybody can afford to put a pitched roof on a dwelling.
You have a strikeout underline version, or do we just have the two clean versions? So can I see this section G with the strikeout underline?
It was reconfigured so that
Oh, yes.
So I have a question about the practice of the policy. For 53 permits, does the city generally interface with the contractor who sort of gets it through all the administrative hurdles and helps the homeowner get to plugging in? Or are these 53 citizens that have to appear and file and pay a fee? And
So if it's a special use permit, I'm going to say it's likely the homeowner. I don't think they're paying a solar contractor to come to a meeting. I'm kind of looking at Benjamin. He's reviewed quite a few. My opinion is it's pretty much the solar contractors that are submitting the wireless permit, or not wireless, the solar permits.
correct. I think,
And then the
Maybe
homeowner
one-
calls and asks why the permit isn't issued yet.
yes, maybe one or
Because your
two.
contractor didn't submit the permit. That's why.
Maybe one or two I can think where the homeowner submitted it, but it's almost always the solar installer who submits on behalf of the property owner.
Because that's one of the draws that the solar contractors have is we'll take care of all the permitting.
makes me think that this really isn't that much of an administrative hurdle for the average person,
No, I don't think it is.
and that it's a good policy that we should maintain. I agree with you.
You know, it's at the most all it'd be is just another small hoop that the contractor has to deal with. Because I don't know of anybody that puts up their own solar, at least not in the last
I guess
40 years.
the issue that I'm seeing, though, at least from what we're hearing with this discussion, is that, okay, say I live in a flat roof house and I want to go pull a permit for this and I need that special exception permit. I have to go through the Board of Adjustment and have them give that to me. And if in any way that character of the panels going up with the angle are going to be a detriment to the character of the neighborhood, that will be denied flat out if we're doing it on a consistent basis.
I don't think it'd be denied flat out, would it, Kelly? You just have to go through the process, and the person going through the process,
So that's
99% of the time is not the homeowner, it's the contractor.
We've only had
the
an N equals
homeowner's the
one.
one that cares about getting the permit, not the contractor.
I understand that, but
So go back to that. So if you believe that if I go to the ZBA, I'm going to be in character with the neighborhood with an angled solar panel, why do I need a permit to say that's okay if you're already assuming that it is okay? That's kind of where we're coming from. If we're saying it's okay to push someone into a permit because no problem, it's just going to get approved. What's the what's the purpose of the permit process?
Well,
Oh,
I'm not sure we have agreement on here that that we're saying it doesn't change the character of. It sounds like we have disagreement on that. Am I right?
State that again.
That wouldn't change the character of the neighborhood.
On anything that
So-
doesn't change the character of the neighborhood, it's fine. But I'm saying that if
So the premise though was that a non-flush, geez, I can't talk anymore. A non-flush mounted installation may be or will be detrimental to neighborhood character. That's the premise of why we wouldn't remove the regulations, right?
Right.
And we're saying then that if you're going to ZBA, and one of the standards is that you're consistent with the residential character, unless you're able to position that in some way on your property where it's basically not visible or minimally visible, that's the only way that particular type of house can have a solar panel.
So this regulation is basically blocking from any place that would not be allowed to do the flush mount. This regulation is blocking them from having solar
Mhm.
panels.
Or it's putting them into a discretionary process with no predictable outcome.
Yeah, but flat roofs are probably a very small percentage of the total number of roofs. And 98% of the people have followed the process without writing a letter. I don't understand why we throw it out throughout the review process.
if
I disagree with that, though. I actually think that it's not the people going through the process that are writing a letter or not. I think very few people go through the process because it's very unlikely they'll get the permits.
That may
So
be true. I recognize that. Yeah.
I think that's basically there's a block right now on people getting solar panels who have flat roofs in town.
I mean, this is anecdotal. I can't say that I have heard from my planning staff that they've fielded many requests and people did not file applications. So I can't come here and say I know of at least 8 people that never filed an application because they didn't think they could get it. I don't have any evidence to that effect. I don't remember any of our other staff when we went through this and described what we're doing going, oh yeah, that'll help such and such who didn't do this.
I'm not aware personally of any that have not applied because they were daunted by the current regulations. And I don't know that any of the other planners are either, but I have not asked that specific question.
Yeah, I feel like
how many, can you say how many applications have been denied?
none.
None? Well, then there's,
But-
we're
it-
trying to make a problem where there is no
so that's
problem.
not
But
that's
deny is different than we make you go back and modify your design because it doesn't quite comply with the 6 inches or the flush mounted.
Or people that wouldn't, or just don't even attempt it because they are under the impression that they will not be approved.
I disagree with that statement because the way that people buy solar is they approach a solar company and they say, I'd like to put solar on my house. The company that provides the solar goes, fine, we'll take care of everything for you. You just pay us the money. That is the way it actually happens. And
I mean, so the real question is talking to solar contractors to say, hey, what's been your experience with putting these on in Ames? Have you had people with flat roofs approach you? I mean, maybe it's not a problem, but
I think we're making a problem where there isn't a problem. I really do. If you take away this regulation, can I put solar panels, build for lack of a better word, a scaffold on the peak of my roof and put my solar panels up there? Yes or no? So it's
I
going
can
to be
answer
up
it.
above the peak of my roof.
I can answer it this way. The zoning regulations would not care what you're doing on that scaffold. We would just care about the total height of the structure. And then you still have to meet electric and building code. So zoning wouldn't care about the aesthetic issue. It would care about the absolute height.
But if we remove the standards that are now in place, I could do that as long as it meets the rest of the code, correct?
Would it be practical though?
Yeah, why
We've
not?
had derechos.
Why not?
yeah, I mean, your stuff's.
I mean, you're going to have to meet structural require. I
I
mean,
wouldn't do that.
it's not
No, I
as easy to
wouldn't
do
do
as what
that.
you.
No.
Because I wouldn't want them blowing everywhere.
Well,
They have to look at what's practical.
they
as
wouldn't,
well.
they wouldn't blow any, The only problems with solar that
We're
I've,
kind of worrying about these things that are jutting way up in the air. And if you have to do that, solar is probably not practical. You're not going to want to pay for it. You're not going to want to have to maintain it. It's.
but along the same line, this may be the one person that decides that's how he wants to do it. By doing away with the regulations that we have right now, that one person could do that as long as it complies with the rest of the codes for buildings, correct?
Absolutely.
There you go.
I don't know. I guess I'm just not as worried about the one weirdo.
That's what we're doing. That is what we're trying. He said, they have said, there's one person that has approached them that wants this changed.
Well,
And that's,
we
so,
don't know exactly his reasoning and what he's planning either. So
no,
you can't assume that he's going to go way up off the peak of the
I
roof.
agree.
So just knowing the individual, it wasn't necessarily even, I believe in his first email, it's not even about him. He's part of the climate action planning group, and he's approaching it philosophically versus what practically can he do on his lot. If I remember back from his first correspondence.
And that's what I'm doing with the scaffolding, you put the solar panels up there.
So, so
theoretically.
you can go put scaffolding on your roof right now. You just can't put solar panels on it.
Okay.
Right. So that's what we're talking about.
There you go.
So we're talking about solar panels, not scaffolding. Right. So the assembly structure, you can do that now and put a piñata up on your roof. I have no rules against that.
Right.
It's about whether a solar panel can be attached to that. So it's the solar panel that you should be concerned about, not the structure that supports it. Because if you're going to talk about crazy things you can do in Ames, you can do a ton of crazy things on your property right now. Just can't have a solar panel attached to it. So that,
Yeah.
I don't know that I have any more really to add in terms of perspective or background from the letter writer, but it's more of a philosophical issue for them than it is for practical installation on his part.
Looking at the summary of changes 1 through 6, are there any of those that are? I mean, I'm trying to figure it out in my own mind, but any that are reliant on each other? Like, if there were some of these that we wanted to consider and others we wanted to write off, would there be any that would need to be approved together, I guess, or recommended together? I mean, obviously, I think 5 and 6 can exist on their own. I think looking at the marked up version, but 1 through 4.
If you look at the standards, so let's look at 1, 2. So right, so the hierarchy of the ordinances must be flush mounted. If you're not flush mounted, there's some prescribed standards and an extra process to go through at the ZBA. So you could pull the permit of going to the ZBA out of it and still retain a standard. That'd be one option.
So you could pull 2.
You
keep one?
could split 2 apart and say, I want to keep a standard, which is I can have no more than X height,
Oh.
but you don't need to go to ZBA. That's one version of 2. One is really the flush mount on a pitched roof.
Right.
You could, I mean, again, you could remove the permit process and say any flush mounted system is exempt from a permit. That just puts you into a code enforcement process. May or may not be easier to get a permit. It probably isn't any easier or not easier because you're still getting a building permit or an electrical permit.
Right.
So if I was trying to break this out and say I want to make something easier, it's probably more about what number 2 is than it is number 1. We can remove the 6 inches, right? 6 inches is a pretty narrow band of compliance. I'm not sure anybody cares if it's 8 inches or 9 inches or 10 inches. I can understand 3 feet being significantly different. If that 6 inches, I don't know from your experience, does everybody come in at 6? Is it a little bit higher and then they have to pull back the system to get to 6?
I would say the most common comment that I have back to the applicants is please specify what the height is because they don't say what it is on there.
Right. Usually you get shop drawings, which aren't very, they aren't
Correct.
specific to the house.
Yes. Mhm.
I think the non-conforming status, that's independent of all of them.
Yep.
I mean, you could change nothing else, but then allow them on non-conforming structures. 5 and 6, there's no material change to any standards there. It's just easier to understand, right?
Yeah. Mhm. Yeah, with 6, the goal is to not have very long paragraphs like the one you see up in front of you with
Yeah, I
multiple
like 6.
requirements.
I like 5 and 6.
Because it's hard to enforce and read.
Can we decide there's a specific solar special use permit uniquely to that
That paragraph does mentions special use permits.
solar energy system, and that had its own unique criteria, right?
There's the criteria that is found elsewhere in the code. I don't have my code in front of me.
It's in Article 15.
But.
But there-
Oh, is it later?
I don't know. That's them.
Oh wait, yes. Oh, sorry. 12. Hang on.
13. So here's just to bring that back up. It's at the end of this section. If you're kind of wondering what ZBA is supposed to make a decision on, this is 12. So
Your criteria.
we didn't propose to delete it, but it probably doesn't need to exist either. If we
Well, it might be for other kind.
It
For
could
the
be.
other, whether they're ground mounted or wall mounted.
so I think
Why there would.
this is what I'm really focused on is just in theoretical discussions tonight. When you look at 1 and 2, this is totally discretionary. What's harmonious in the character of the neighboring properties? You can all come up with a situation where it absolutely is harmonious. Then there's going to be a big gray area. And then there's going to be some that you're pretty confident would never be harmonious, right? And that's the ZBA's job. They're there to make that decision. But if you're really intent on having solar, you have no guarantee that you're going to get that on a flat, if it's not flush mount.
Other discussion or questions? Hearing none. What is your direction you'd like to go on this?
You're asking for
A
motion?
A motion.
I recommend alternative number 2. Recommend that the city council takes no action to amend the solar energy system regulations and continue to apply zoning standards and permit requirements.
That's second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay.
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 Yay.
Nay. Okay, the motion fails. Is there any further discussion, or is anybody that would like to present another option, another alternative?
I would recommend that the city council adopt additional or modified changes to the solar energy system regulations. And not only in addition to those presented in attachment B, but possibly adjusting those in attachment B.
That is alternative 3, correct?
Yes.
We have a motion on the floor. For a
Can I
second?
ask a question?
No.
Is that okay?
Go ahead.
If we do that, do we need to be recommending those changes as part of this, or can we direct staff? I mean, how does that work? I guess because I don't know what that means. I guess
Can you say it again, Mike? What your motion was?
It's a motion.
And-
Motion 3.
motion 3. He's
Motion
recommending for 3.
Yeah, you
but
tell me exactly what you're keeping or changing.
And Commissioner, if you could just move the microphone just center it in front of you.
Sorry.
There you go. Thank you.
So yeah, so on alternative 3, we just need to know what you want to keep and what you
I think what
Don't
we
wanna
need
do.
to readdress is the no height requirements. That's what seems to be getting everybody upset about the way it is as proposed. We're saying that we'll go with the zoning height requirements for the neighborhood. But if you have a low pitched roof and the height requirement, and your roof is 12 feet, and for a 2-story house, you know, they allow 24 feet. I think the concern is that you could then have your solar panel sticking 12 feet up off of your roof, and that's going to be unsightly.
And there were some other standards in here. I can't find them now, but it was like, here we go. It's under 4. That's for non-residential though. Let me see if it's in here. That's for wall mounted. I mean, just some standards, just like what he mentioned about like, can we keep it so you can't put them as a sale up on, you know, some sort of height restriction, something that will make people color in the lines a little bit to protect that community character. So if we lift all of this, it won't be a free for all.
Isn't that what was in here? Like the limit on to 10 feet?
That's it, but that's for non-residential.
Oh, okay.
There's nothing in there
yeah,
like
everything's
that.
kind of divided between residential and commercial.
Right, okay.
Commercial is written differently than the residential. Residential is way more restrictive than commercial before this.
So what specifically is your motion?
That they revisit, number 1, and that's the one that really I see a problem with, out of the 6 summary of changes.
So what is, again, what is the motion? So we
You're-
know what we're voting on.
So 1 is the requirement for the flush mounting and being within 6 inches of the roof. That's what number 1 is, correct? And this, you're talking about the summary of the changes in the staff report, I
Mhm.
assume.
Yeah.
Yeah, the
Is that what that includes?
one is the height and the
You know,
flush
it's
mount requirement.
remove rooftop solar energy system height limitations. That's the one I think more so than flush with the roof. It's the absence of height limitations.
And are you saying you'd like to retain the current standards or modify them to something else?
Modify them. Because in some roofs, you are going to want to get up a little bit. But again, just having a free-for-all does open it up.
So right now, how is it worded? 5 feet is the maximum with a special use permit. So it's 6 inches now with nothing but administrative review, and then I think it's up to 5 feet with ZBA approval. Is that how it's written?
And the chances of somebody wanting to go up 5 feet on one end would probably be a flat roof then, I assume. So even if you have a low pitch,
I mean,
you might need to go up more than 6 inches.
yeah, I think at least my understanding is that you pretty much live with the pitch of your roof unless you really can't use it because the extra cost and the structure and everything you have to do to just get a little more angle for a little more efficiency is not really worth it. It's the very, very shallow roofs or the flat roof that they're going to invest in that extra structure.
So is there a figure that people would, like 5 feet, that people would find acceptable?
5 feet they could do on any pitch roof.
Is the question the
With
5
a
feet or
special
the 6
use.
inches?
Pardon?
Is the question the 5 feet, the 6 inches, or both?
I'm not so concerned about the 6 inches.
Meaning
Personally.
meaning if it was deleted, that doesn't bother you.
Correct.
It's potentially deleting that the maximum of 5 feet is what's concerning.
Right.
So
And it,
I don't have a standard to suggest. I think that's what you're wanting, and I don't
Right.
have not thought about that specifically or studied what other communities do or what the American Planning Association recommends. I haven't talked to the solar distributors themselves and asked what is customary either.
Are any thoughts from the commission?
If we don't know, okay. If we don't understand what we're voting on or don't understand the limits, then we can refer it back to staff for more information. That's not one of the alternatives, but you can do that.
I was just about ready to suggest that it would make sense to go back and ask the staff to look at
Further.
further look at the height system limitations, since that's the main sticking point here, I think.
Yep.
In
I
what?
see that as the main sticking.
And again, when we say height, are we talking, if this is our roof here, we're worried about the solar panel being up to here if this was 5 feet, or are we worried about the solar panel being raised and the top of my pen is 5 foot?
Probably both. If
Yeah, I
you
think we're
if
talking
you
about
open
both.
if you open up
Okay.
one side, you can open up both to the 5 feet. You can do raise 5 feet and be flat.
So we're talking
Wait,
about
the-
flush mount and height that are issues.
My own personal thought was, if you can't go with the pitch of your roof, you're going to be altering it. You're not going to, there's no reason if the pitch of your roof is good to raise the whole thing 5 feet and keep that same angle.
You don't know that.
So what we're looking at here,
Well-
in my opinion,
I think we have a lot of
Okay.
evidence that no one's done that. No one's even asked to do that.
'Cause
Well,
I
I've
100% agree with Mike. If your roof pitch is adequate, there's no reason to spend extra money on a structure that's going to come off the roof and be.
Well, there's a house in my neighborhood that had this, and they recently removed it, but they wanted, their pitch is east to west, and they wanted the southern exposure,
Yep.
so they pitched it. And that's not there anymore. That house took those down, I think, when it sold, but there is a valid reason to do that,
So if your
even if
pitch,
you have a pitched roof.
so if your pitch was appropriate, is what I was saying.
Right.
Right. That one
Yeah.
I would say is not appropriate because it doesn't
Right.
face the right way. Right. So to do that, what Mike is talking about, so if you're the wrong access for your roof, you would be limited under this standard to no more than 5 feet in parallel to that roof, and the ZBA would have to agree to it, facing to the south if your roof is facing the other direction. So that's how that would work today. So if we deleted that, you're right, then there would be no limit on how it projects off perpendicular to the roof towards the sun in that direction.
Regs are starting
So-
to seem like they make sense. Just starting to.
So is there a motion on the table?
There was a
still?
motion,
Yes, there is.
motion, but not a second.
Okay,
right,
well, let's look for a second.
Okay, did we further define it enough, the motion enough to say what that condition would be?
well, we're going to keep the height limitation of 5 feet.
Okay. So what you're saying is you're recommending number 3, alternative number 3, with the exclusion of the removed rooftop solar energy system height limitations. You're keeping those limitations, in other words. Is there a second?
So just to clarify, keeping the height to 5 feet, but we're okay scratching the flush.
Right.
Right.
And not having to go through any extra steps to get to that 5 feet in terms of approvals. That would just be
Okay, so then the standard would just be up to 5 feet of projection off a roof administratively approved. So simplify all that down into just one standard. Doesn't require ZBA. There's no just judgment of character. It's just whether it's 5 feet or less off the plane of the roof.
Yep.
Yeah, that's understandable.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second? Can the chair second?
As far as I know.
Okay.
What?
Can the
I'll second-
chair,
I'll
can the
second.
chair second a motion?
Yeah.
I don't know why they can't.
Okay. I'll second the motion then.
Can you state the motion? That's what I
Just
need.
did.
Yeah, I'll
need
try.
to-
So
That's-
I'll give it a shot. This is how I
No,
understand it.
the person making the motion needs to state the motion. Is that correct under the Robert's Rules of Order or any rules of?
I frequently restate motions for everybody to make sure that we understand what they are.
Then I need a
especially at
clarification
city
on what
council.
the motion is, because I have no idea what the
The
motion.
motion, as I understand it, is to recommend all of the changes supported by staff with the exception of removing the 5-foot height limit for solar installations, which means that there would be a 5-foot standard, but you would not need a special use permit to get to that. And then all the other changes would happen.
Yes.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
I
Aye. Those opposed say nay.
Nay.
Okay.
Motion loses.
I had a feeling that would happen.
That's all right.
So
I,
could we-
I, so I was just gonna say, so I think this might be one of those things where, I mean, obviously, this individual is in favor of more simpler, regulations related to this, but it might be one of those where it needs to be more complex in order to work. Because there's different pitches of roofs, because there's, I don't know. I think I think that motion was oversimplifying things, which is why I said no. I don't know. I think it's kind of hard to go through this right now and say, well, leave this in and keep this, but get rid of this. And I think it needs to be looked at a little bit closer, but I don't know.
I'd never even thought about a non-south facing ceiling. I mean, I forgot all about that. And then, thank you for bringing that up.
I mean, but do they always have to be mounted just on the south? I think I had a neighbor just get it, and his
don't-
is to the north. It's flush.
You don't have to, but
It's for
It's
all
it's
people.
Pretty inefficient.
it's the
Pretty
most efficient
standard.
way to generate electricity is southern exposure in
Mhm.
Iowa. So
Okay.
Within like 20 or 30 degrees.
Yeah, if you're
If
gonna,
it's truly north facing, you're not going to get a lot of efficiency out of your
When-
installation.
I have a north facing roof, part of a roof. I'd never even dream of putting solar up there because it just wouldn't draw in enough.
Yep.
It'd be a waste of you throwing away your money. So, if the people didn't want to, if they had a flat roof, they could always go with a ground mounted system that wouldn't change the neighborhood necessarily as long as it's in the backyard or whatever. But,
is this even possible? Would there be a way to take a look at this and try to account for the concerns with the different types of roofs, I guess? Or do you feel that does this already, I guess? Or because that's what I'm seeing is a lot of the conflict here is that we don't want to change the character of the neighborhood. I think people are supportive of solar. We want that, and that's the direction of council. But if there's a way to do both better than this, I'd be in favor of it, I guess.
oh, I would too. There's no question. I would, as long as there was something that would not destroy the character of the neighborhood and allow somebody to put solar up, or wind. And I even think that Ames is probably lacking a little bit for solar support in that if you put a solar panel on your roof, you can have you put it on, say on the backyard, your neighbor in the back can plant oak trees. And in 20 years, or maple trees, 20 years, you're not going to have any solar or very little solar. So there should be something a little bit more
Well,
aggressive that way too.
and another problem is defining what changes the characteristic of the neighborhood. That's a pretty broad statement.
Yes,
And
it
that's
is.
open to interpretation. So just saying, oh, we can't change the character of the neighborhood without defining what that would be isn't,
I mean, the other thing too would be what would happen if someone with a flat roof came and it had the south facing portion of their lawn happened to be on the backside of the house. Would that pass ZBA then? I mean, that's another, do we just care about the front of the house?
Isn't this kind of what ZBA is meant to? I mean, it's really hard to write rules and regulations from my experience, but zoning for every possible situation. And isn't that kind of the, maybe I'm wrong on this, but isn't that somewhat the role of ZBA to make those determinations?
It absolutely is. It's just that when you read the
Doesn't make-
criteria, when you read the criteria, it's exactly what you just said. It's unpredictable. So one neighborhood might get approved because nobody came to complain. One block over, 3 people might come and complain. Same installation, same house, different result.
And is it an additional permit fee to do that?
Yeah,
special
there is.
exception?
I think it's $150 to apply for a ZBA permit.
There is no fee for the standard
Okay.
zoning permit for solar energy.
Oh yeah, so administrative is free. The ZBA one has a fee.
Correct.
So anything that we propose, we could attach a rider or whatever you want to call on it, taking away any zoning board of adjustment fee for solar.
You can't do that.
Because they have to notify
Ci-
everybody
city-
within 200.
But city council controls fees.
Yeah,
Planning and
that's not
zoning
our
commission has nothing to do with
authority.
fees.
Yeah.
But yet all we're doing is making a recommendation to the city council.
It's not in the zoning ordinance. The fees are in a code that you guys have no purview
Authority over that.
To say nothing of the fact that like they still have to mail everything. There's still cost associated with that the city would eat then if they. I mean, is there a design review committee or something that could also? No. Okay. Nothing like that. That could review special cases in this case.
No, we don't have any design review boards.
There's no motion on the floor, right?
Not now, no.
Would it be appropriate to lay this on the table?
Direct it back, or what are you trying to say? Direct it back to city staff?
You have
No?
technically you have up to, it's defined in the ordinance. Remember if it's 30 or 60 days to make a recommendation, or it automatically moves on to the city council. I'd have to look whatever it is, but for sure you can table it for at least, I'll look it up while we sit here actually.
It's been,
So we could either.
was this on the agenda last time?
Yes.
It was.
So that clock's been ticked.
I'll,
Picking.
I'll read the standards here. Just give me a second. If you want to keep going, I'll.
As I understand it, if we go back to alternative 2, it can be proposed again by the city council.
They can do whatever they want.
Yeah,
We're
the
just
city
They don't
will
have to
make our
make a
recommendation.
recommendation.
They can.
Sometimes they don't.
I mean, are there any of these summary of changes? Are there any that we can agree on and approve tonight? Or would that be, I mean, maybe that doesn't, I'm just thinking maybe we can approve what we do agree on and leave the rest. just trying to think of a way forward.
Well, definitely not one.
No.
All of one or just the first half of it?
Well, the height limitations was, I mean, that could go either way, whether you were parallel with the roof or not, right? So that could go either way. Flush mounted, it seems like we don't agree on that because that could change the character if you have a roof pitch going one way and then the panels going the other way. So I would say we don't have an agreement on flush mount. We might not have an agreement on height either if
No.
we've got the sale issue. So we don't have agreement at all on any part of number one. I think we're kind of in an impasse on number two for the special use permit as well, because we don't have a good way to, a good process to go through with all these different assessments. I'm not sure. Does anybody have any comments on three? Just the general permitting. I would assume that all permits, I mean, we still need all the permits that they mention here. Building, electrical, interconnected permit on the first page here that they mentioned 4 permits. I would assume we don't want to take that out of the purview of zoning.
So far, we can't agree on 1, 2, or 3.
Mm-hmm.
4,
I think 4, my personal opinion is that that's fine. You're going to have lots of buildings that are non-conforming that should have the right to get solar panels. And I think that's how it goes right now, right? It's buildings that are non-conforming can have them. So I would be in agreement with 4. Anybody else?
For 4, what is actually changed? That was one I wasn't sure on what was actually stricken or changed in here. Can someone point to that for me?
Not sure.
Is that in that large paragraph?
The thing that would be changing, hang on, let me get there. So this is the proposed section. So B there. We wanted to clarify there are many structures around Ames that project into minimum setbacks, and just clarifying that that wouldn't be an impediment to placing the solar panels on that roof.
I
For
would-
example, you could have a lot of Ames, a 2-story house might have a 5-foot setback. We require 8 feet. So it's a non-conforming structure in the sense that it's only 5 feet from the property line instead of 8. So this is making it clear that that installation can go in that 3 feet that should have been a setback for the house.
Correct.
That doesn't exist.
Yeah.
I'm definitely in agreement with
you're
that.
talking about in the front yard, if it's,
Talking about any setback.
Any yard, any setback.
If the house is built in a place that doesn't meet current setbacks, this allows you to put a solar panel on that roof, even though the house itself doesn't meet setbacks currently. We have a lot of 2-story houses that don't have the required
yeah,
side yard setbacks.
right, I understand. That looks okay. I think we,
Yeah.
I think we can agree on that, but
What is actually changed for that to? I'm just trying to make sure I understand, I guess.
All this struck.
Clarifying that it's
That entire paragraph?
Yeah, it's out.
Okay.
yes, yeah, what's being stricken. There wasn't a specific, but we do talk elsewhere in the code about nonconformities, and this was just to clarify that if you do have a roof and it projects into a setback, that you are allowed to put a solar panel on that roof.
I'm in favor of that. Anybody else in favor of number 4?
I think I'm okay with that one.
Okay, I think we're
you go.
5 and 6. Anyone object to those? I think those are pretty straightforward.
I think that those are as well. So I would be in favor of 5 and 6. Not exactly. I mean, it's just general reorganization.
Yeah.
Yeah, just the big ones, 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah.
Well, I'll make a motion to recommend the city council adopt items 4, 5, and 6 from the summary of changes.
You're making a recommendation on alternative 3?
No.
No,
Well,
with the, and then stating what the changes.
I guess it would be alternative 3 incorporating numbers 4, 5, and 6 from the summary of changes as described in attachment B.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
One second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Kelly has something to say.
I can answer your question. You have 30 days from when. You have 30 days from when it is referred to you to make a referral back to city council. So I would count 30 days from today.
Yeah, since we didn't have a meeting 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have a motion for alternative 3, accepting summary of changes number 4, 5, and 6. And that's been seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Motion passes.
We passed something.
Okay, the next item is item 10, zoning text amendment to lot standards related to minimum floor area ratios.
Ooh, this one was another one.
Last month, council referred to staff a letter from the owner of this property here, Mr. Nelson, regarding standards for minimum floor area ratio (FAR) for a property with a non-conforming building. This is the corner of 5th and Burnett, so just down the street. FAR is the ratio of floor area to the lot area. Council considered the issues related to Mr. Nelson's request regarding the merger of the lots. These were originally 3 parcels, and they have now been combined into one. Council directed staff to initiate a text amendment for minimum FAR standards related to changes in lot configurations, but did not direct staff to alter the minimum FAR requirement related to buildings. This property here was approved for a site plan last fall. Combining, it was 2 things were happening: combining 3 parcels into one and approving a site plan for this building, to combining those 2 buildings on the west there and then building a new portion on the east. And those 2 pieces were contingent upon one another. The plat could not be approved on its own because the zoning, the DSC, the Downtown Service Center zoning, requires a minimum floor area ratio of 1. So you take the area of the lot, you have to have at least that much area in the building. And so this site plan made it so that we could approve the plat, but the plat can't, the plat is contingent on the site plan, and the site plan was contingent on the plat because you can't cross property lines with the building. After the site plan was approved, after the site plan and the plat were approved, Mr. Nelson decided to renovate the existing building, so just that portion to the west there, and without constructing the addition that would bring the property into compliance with the minimum FAR, and there's also a minimum height requirement. The portion on the east is 2-story, which is also required in the DSC zoning. Because of the change in Mr. Nelson's plans, the certificate of occupancy cannot be issued for a property that does not comply with the site plan and is not in compliance with the zoning. The DSC zoning district has those 2 standards, the minimum FAR and the minimum height, in order to encourage density in the downtown and to match the building typology within Ames downtown. The DSC and the height standards have been discussed in the past. The city council choosing to retain these requirements in the downtown area. And due to the importance of these two standards reinforcing the character of the historic downtown, staff does not support removing them. Council considered two text amendment options to enable Mr. Nelson to maintain the combined parcels and to continue to remodel the existing building. And they directed staff to proceed with changing lot merger requirements. The current code prohibits newly platted or replatted lots from creating nonconformities. And this is a standard of, I'm sure, every zoning code. You can't move lot lines that are going to create a nonconformity. So you couldn't move a lot line closer to a building that would then make that building encroach into a setback, is a classic example. The intent is that changes to a lot or parcel should not create a condition that inhibits future development. And in your just bringing up the language here.
While he's looking for that, Kelly, this is the old electronic engineering and that cafe that was next to it? Or that may be before your time?
It's been neither of those things since I lived here, but I think so. It's the corner of
The old-
Fifth and Burnett. It's right out the window.
The old gas, there used to be a gas.
Matisse and Ford, is that what it was?
It was originally built as a gas station and an auto service center. The two buildings were technically built separately. There was a pet shop in the south one when it had a different facade on it. And I believe, yes, there was an electrical store at the corner one. Sometime
Electrical
ago.
engineering and
There
there was a restaurant right next to it and it's not it was just to the east of it.
There's nothing to the east of it right now. That building was demolished. And so the code change you can see up here is underlined, amending the section regarding changes in lot shape. So the code reads, maintaining minimum floor area ratio requirements is excluded for boundary line adjustments and lot mergers. This does not exclude, however, use of a lot from meeting all development standards and nonconformity requirements related to buildings and site improvements. And then we also are in discussion about how to meet council's directive. Wanted to make sure that the code changes didn't allow for other things. For instance, we wanted to, the second, and you can see here, we wanted to make sure that the change is to make clear that developing a lot requires a building. And so that this, the code change I just read with regard to lot mergers wouldn't permit then construction of a parking lot or another non-building related improvement that isn't acceptable. Staff does recommend the amended zoning regulations for lot mergers and for minimum intensity. And I can take any questions.
And that's what the city council recommends. Also,
They haven't recommended anything. They directed us to look at amending the code. They did choose we did present two options in a staff report to them last month, or I guess it was last month, and they did choose option one on.
I guess that's what I
option
was
two
asking.
on page.
Yeah.
Sorry, yes. Mhm.
Any questions? Discussion? On an item like this, are we supposed to have the public forum?
Yeah, you can take yes, you can take all the public comment you want.
Okay.
He's here all.
Eileen, Eileen has really strong
We'll
opinions.
see if Eileen has any comments. Well, I'll formally ask if there's anybody in the audience that has anything that they would like to ask or make comment on. Seeing none, we'll close the forum. With that, and if there are no other questions, I would entertain a motion if you so desire.
I'll make a motion for alternative 1, recommend that city council amend the general zoning regulations related to minimum floor area ratio for lot mergers and minimum intensity, section 29.303(2)A and section 29.4013 as presented above.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Motion is approved. Commission comments. No comments? Is there movement afoot to fill our empty seat?
I'm going to guess not till April when normal
Probably,
appointments
okay.
occur.
The
'cause
normal
we're-
time? Okay.
Yeah, they're recruiting applications across the city right now. I don't see it happening before the general
Okay.
appointments happen.
Anything for the next time?
Don't think
Right now, anyway. I know it always could come up.
3, yeah. I think we weren't going to have that meeting. I don't believe you're having your middle February meeting. I mean, I don't think we have an item for your next meeting right now.
So you're not bringing us any Valentine gifts.
Not bringing any late Valentines, no. I'll be right here with my Valentines on February 14th.
Oh, okay.
Okay, any other staff comments? Hearing none, with that, I would accept a motion to adjourn.
So move.
We have a motion.
Second.
Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned.